the technological world, as the most important part of a video game is the game itself. If a game isn't all that great, it won't sell over time. But if you want your game to completely fall apart the second it launches, just don't finish the game. Unfinished titles plagued the market for years. We all remember when AAA title companies like Activision and EA were releasing games that weren't finished on launch but got patched as time went on. This shit was so common that an acronym was created to explain the phenomenon. GAS. Yeah, GAS. Meaning games as a service, or gas as in the stinky air that comes out of assholes. These games were the epitome of the industry for so long, but one of my favorite examples of this is the story of Star Wars Battlefront. The year is 2015. It's a good year for gaming. Fallout 4, Rainbow Six Siege, Metal Gear Solid 5, Dying Light, Tomb Raider, all these titles dropped in 2015. It was a damn good year. But from the crusty, dusty shadows of hell, EA has found itself the owner of a Star Wars gaming franchise and decides to reboot the entire thing in a Battlefield-like, true-to-fans multiplayer jam-packed with content. November 17th, 2015, the fans got the exact opposite. This game on launch was one of the biggest fumbled bags in the history of video games. The game was developed by DICE, the same company that makes the Battlefield games. So that sounded great on paper, but in reality that couldn't have been any worse of an idea considering who was paying these guys to make the game. The game launched with the incentive for new, young players to play with their parents rather than the very obvious fan base of teens and adults who wanted to enjoy a legitimate game for Star Wars as a franchise. On top of that, the gameplay was difficult to capture in the beginning because the servers were absolutely terrible. If you didn't know what lag was before playing this game on launch, you became a fucking expert on it afterward. And keep this in mind, DICE made this game, the same company that fits upwards of 64 players into one Battlefield map. The game was virtually unplayable for most players on launch, and it took a while before EA kinda got their shit together. Well, there was another fuck up of theirs a few years later, but we won't get into that. The point is that EA pretty much fucked up in not doing any quality assurance tests to ensure the game's playability, and it nipped them in the ass. Hard. Like, really hard. It's the most hated video game company in the world, besides Activision Blizzard, of course. Want another example? WWE 2K20. To all my wrestling fans out there, it must have been a fucking disaster when this game hit the shelves. At launch, WWE 2K20 was completely broken and somehow, someway, is still broken to this day. While you can give EA the benefit of the doubt and assume that they fucked up on accident, 2K knew in advance that they weren't going to be working with the same cast of devs from the previous installments and still decided to release this heaping pile of cat crap to the public. The plan here was to fix the game as time went on, but time has gone on and the game still hasn't fully been fixed. And then to add on to the dog pile, the content of the game, when it does work, is lackluster and adds no value to the plummeting piece of garbage. Both games are considered gas games, and there are plenty of examples of these kinds of games, but not all games are unfinished because they want money. Sometimes it's an outside influence that impacts the title's success. Yup, you motherfuckers are responsible for this shit too. Not to say that fans are primarily responsible for the failure of a game, but sometimes the fandom can become a bit overzealous in their attempts to see a game released from a certain company. This could also be a means of rushing development, as it's more commonly known, but many people tend to forget that a rushed title is rushed for a reason. Franchises like Call of Duty and NBA 2K20 are great examples of fan investment and pressure leading to a new title every damn year. Seriously, how do you expect people to make a video game in 1 to maybe 3 years tops, especially from a AAA company? Now, some of you might look at my continuous battle with my arch nemesis Dan Salvato as a hypocritical battle considering what I've just said, but I would like to point something out. When I question why there isn't a DDLC secondary installment, it's because that's exactly what Dan was and is making. It's been 4 years since the original Doki Doki Literature Club was released on Steam. That's not rushed, that's taking too damn long, especially for a visual novel game. Like, what graphics do you have to put in there? NBA 2K fans will understand what I mean when I say rushed, because the past 3 2K titles have been exactly the same, with a ridiculous emphasis on VC, the in-game currency that you can only purchase with real money. They've been suffering for years, all because of this notion that a new sports game should release every single year, updated with new rosters, rather than just updating a current title. Many games suffer from fan pressure, but fans are honestly a small part of that underlying pressure brought on by a need to have some satisfaction. The larger portion of that would be, if you thought fans were bad enough every now and again, imagine having a man in a suit watching over your shoulder every single day, demanding when their money is going to be put to some good use and when they're going to start seeing some profits. It could kill a man. That's what investor pressure is. People or companies who invest money in the development of a title in order to receive some profits back from it. A lot of the time, the investors aren't even directly investing in the game, they just have shares in the company. These mole people are the epitome of the industry because they have not a single clue on how video games work most of the time, and yet act like they're the inventor of the Atari 2600 and can do and say whatever the fuck they want to whomever the hell they please. But they're a necessity. Without them, the game and most likely company would cease to exist. I guess you could say that investors are a lot like taxes, evil necessities, and because of that, I hate them. Competition is rare, but probably one of the quickest ways to fail dramatically in your quest for glory as a game developer. If you don't do your research properly, your game could go from being a promising title with support from a huge chunk of the community to absolute disaster left in the history books. A great example of this type of catastrophe can be attributed to Anthem. What, none of you remember that game? Anthem was a Destiny clone that was so damn innovative that many people called it the Destiny Killer. That's some tough talk coming from a game that hasn't even dropped yet. But who knows? Maybe this game will be like the Destiny Killer everyone makes it out to be. Hey, who's making this game? Son of a bitch! I mean, did you seriously believe that EA was going to create a good game? Great even? No! That's literally in their slogan. EA Sports. We haven't made a great title on launch since Battlefield 3. And they didn't disappoint. Anthem was released in February of 2019 and did absolutely horrible compared to what most people expected. The problem with Anthem, beyond anything else, was its need to compete with Destiny, something that doesn't really have competition because of its uniqueness among other first-person titles. That, and BioWare, the developers of the game, had a huge crossroad that they had to deal with, and because of this, 2 games that really could have been great, Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, ended up being put in the Hall of Shame. Anthem didn't instantaneously fail and spontaneously combusted while being hurled into space at the speed of light, but it never lived up to expectations, not even from day one. Now, at this point, you may be seeing a striking connection all 4 of these points have when it comes to one particular game. Yep, we're talking about the biggest fumbled bag in recent history, Cyberpunk 2077. God, the number of times this game has been shat on in the course of 2020 has been astronomical. Cyberpunk 2077 fits every category I just spoke about to the damn T. The game was completely unfinished heading into its release and got delayed more times than Persona 5. Mind you, that game was announced in 2014 and actually released in 2017. This wouldn't be a big deal if it weren't for CD Projekt, who were seen at the time as pro-consumer and didn't like the methods other companies were using to gain revenue on their titles. But all that crap about being for the people went down the drain the minute people realized the title was a load of unplayable donkey crap. Cyberpunk, although not officially, but we can all see the writing on the wall here, was heavily influenced by fans and investors pressuring CD Projekt to release the game after constant delays. You see, CDPR, just like their foes, who they deem anti-consumer, like Activision and EA, is a publicly traded company, meaning millions of investors are responsible for the company's continued financial success. That's no big deal until a title that's being marketed as a game changer hits the scene. That's when the money alarms go off. So it's natural and most likely correct to assume that investors definitely made it clear they wanted the game to release, and fans were no different, but they had legitimate reasons to push the devs. Lastly, Cyberpunk had competition. and it did not compete well. GTA 5 is still one of the greatest games of all time, but its place in gaming relevance was dwindling. Cyberpunk had taken that as an opportunity to become the new top dog in the gaming industry, but as a result of everything else that happened to it, the game flopped hysterically and couldn't even be bought on the PlayStation Store for months. Cyberpunk 2077 stands as the greatest example of how a video game can fail. It was completely unfinished, even though the story of the game was actually pretty good from what I've heard. It lacked fan and investor patience, and instead suffered from pressure unseen by any other title, and the competition didn't even need to worry about it because it flopped so terribly at launch. Cyberpunk was a disaster, one we've never seen before, right? Oh, come on! Remember how I said that EA had another fuck up a few years after Battlefront was released in 2015? Yeah, well, this is that fuck up. Star Wars Battlefront 2 at launch was everything that Battlefront 1 had wrong with it, and more. For starters, Battlefront 2 implemented a loot crate system that was eerily like the supply drops from Call of Duty, and these loot crates were a complete catastrophe. This concept was so terrible that governments got involved for quite obvious reasons. I mean, seriously, these guys were letting people gamble without actually receiving a fair chance of getting something good, not including the kids that play these games for the most part. Things got so bad that after EA received the most downvoted Reddit post in history, in which they responded to accusations of making progressions in the game extremely long in order to push product, they shut down the loot crate system and eventually had to reconstruct the entire game to make it more consumer friendly. I'm not joking, EA is the most hated company in America and probably the world. But at least Battlefront 2 bounced back and got good. I have great memories of the game playing it with old friends of mine. Cyberpunk 2077, on the other hand, has been a disaster ever since. It was even on sale at one point for $10. Mind you, it came out last year. Both games were really bad, but ironically had pretty good undertones that were just completely overshadowed by their failures in the mainstream to keep fans happy. And this happens to millions of games that release. It's not unlikely to find a game that people generally dislike for certain reasons. But these games put the glass ceiling on a whole new level with all the crap they put into their games, or don't. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I don't have anything else to say about this because I'm not an expert and only know this from what I've seen in previous years. Here are my sources. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment your favorite example of a failed video game, and subscribe and hit the bell next to it to get updated on when I upload. Or don't. It would help support the channel, so make sure to share this video as well if you can. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.